Well, we said it last week. I'm going to say it again this week. We aren't going to go a show without talking about defensive tackles, and we've got a few of them here to talk about on our sell list. First one up that I put on here, Javon Hargrave. He just signed, or unofficially signed, a deal with the 49ers. He's going to be 30 this year, his 8th year in the league, and starting in Pittsburgh, I think it was. But 4-year, $80 million deal is a pretty big contract for a guy of that age, coming off his best season in terms of sacks, and he was up there pretty well in tackles too. It's sort of similar to what Brad said about those cornerbacks. Defensive tackles, by and large, aren't giving you the high-end production year in and year out. If you're in a defensive tackle specific league, I'd say you could probably even get even more for a guy like Hargrave because he's going to be in that top 15 or so defensive tackles. And I like that even better moving on from him where you can get more from him. But I don't see his production just completely repeating because he went from one really good defensive front to another. He's a fine real-life piece. Having Bosa there to take pressure off him is going to be great. Playing that more consistent every down type of role, if that's what he does there, is that, force up the middle. I don't think he's going to get you what he did last year, and that's why I'm looking to move on from him, striking while the iron's hot, so to speak.
Yeah. With any of these positions, DT, CB, any of those where you have a guy of concern on your roster that is definitely on your radar to trade, things like this should be when you start to try to sell. Big move, one of the first big name free agents to make a move and big contract. I mean, this is where you sell it. I mean, people get hyped up on this stuff. This is where you cash in. San Francisco rotates their guys a ton, and I just don't know if he's going to see this. He'll see a heavy snap count. I'm not saying that he won't. I'm just saying they have enough linemen that, man, I don't trust that. Like you said, he's not going to have the same type of value he had in previous years, even as recent as last year. So I'm all about selling him if I had him anywhere. I don't think I have any shares of him though.
On the flip side, and guy quite a bit younger by NFL standards, Daron Payne, Commanders defensive tackle, can be 26 this year, 6th year in the league. He just signed a 4-year, $90 million contract. Can sort of get out after it in 3 years pretty cheaply, but different situation here. But he's still on a great defensive front. He's still getting paid. Why are you looking to move on from Daron Payne?
I think the biggest reason for me is it's you sell while the iron's kind of hot with this type of player. When you had a guy like Chase Young who missed a significant amount of time last year, it gave a guy like Daron Payne more opportunity to get you those fantasy points because he had the time. If Chase Young's healthy, Chase Young is a better player and is going to get more action off the edge than Daron will from rushing up the middle. So in my mind, it's like, okay, you probably have seen the best of Daron Payne unless we have injuries again. Sweat, Young, any of them. If they get injured, then, well, maybe Payne still has it. But otherwise, you've probably seen what you're going to get out of him. So why not sell him now and just be pleased with that return?
Yeah, I mean, he pretty easily had his best season. And there's something to the contract here sometimes for these players. His previous high in sacks was 5 as a rookie. He had 11.5 last year. Tackles, he sort of had a pretty steady progression. He was gone between 54 and 64. Then tackles for a loss, it's the same thing. A high of 7 previously and then 18 this past year. And it is really nice when you have a nice defensive front there, but you aren't going to see, I agree with you, that same level of production year in and year out from Daron Payne.
Absolutely.
And finally, a name that I don't like putting on here, we sort of talked about a little bit last year, but he's still on that list, probably even more so with just the complete rebuild. It kind of feels like the Rams are trying to go down the route of Aaron Donald. So he's going to be 32, his 10th year in the league. He's got 2 years left on his deal and pretty easy out after this year. I don't know that he's a guy who's going to want to go on to a different team. It kind of feels like he was almost at peace, ready to retire after the Super Bowl win. There was talk of it. He re-signed, got a whole bunch of money. If they are really going down this rebuild route and they don't trade him, and sometimes, those icons of a team like that, they don't like actually just moving on from him unless the player wants to. I'm looking to get what I can from Aaron Donald. He's a guy we talked about previously, sort of those guys where it doesn't matter if it's a specific position or just a flat, like defensive line. In this case, he's going to have value for you. He still has that name attached to him. You didn't get as high stats last year because he didn't end up playing the whole year because their season went to heck. but he's going to be back this year by all accounts. I'm certainly looking to move on from him while I can get, and I still think you could get a 3rd-round pick for Aaron Donald or something like that in IDP leagues. What do you think?
I'm with you. I mean, if you've heard the rumors of possibly trading Stafford and some of these aging players, so why not trade a guy like Aaron Donald if a contender is really trying to push all their chips into the middle of the table? So if that's the case, then, you're probably going to get maybe a little bit higher bump of value if you try to trade him at that point. But I have no problem taking a 3rd-round pick for Aaron Donald right now. You're at the point where any year could be that year. I mean, it's kind of like thinking about, the Tom Brady situation. Every year could be that last year that he was being done. Do you want to hold him and then have him drop off your roster because he retired? I don't like doing that. I prefer someone else to have that. So if I can trade him, sure. Give me a 3rd and I'll move on.